Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolf Pit with another episode of What Are We Eating? I love beef enchiladas, Mexican style rice, and refried beans. And if you don't love that combination, you're just wrong. All of that food combined makes a Mexican style fiesta. And after you're done eating that Mexican style fiesta, you're ready for a siesta. But everyone has busy lives and doesn't have the time or simply doesn't want to make all that food, especially if you're single. So that's when you head down your frozen food aisle in your local grocery store and pick up a 16-ounce Hungry Man Selects Mexican style fiesta that costs $4.99. Well, hold on a minute. I just made that sound a whole lot easier than it really was for me. I've seen advertisements for this meal for years now, but I've never ever been able to find one in one of my local grocery stores. Until the other day when I found one in my local Giant Food. The Hungry Man Selects Mexican style fiesta is ready when hunger strikes with a combination of beef enchiladas and corn tortillas with cheese and chili sauce, Mexican style rice, authentic refried beans, and coconut flavored pudding. I hope I pronounced that right, but if I didn't, I know that you, the people, will tell me, especially you, Scooter. Here's the list of ingredients, and holy guacamole, is that a lot of ingredients. Everything but the kitchen sink is in here, including TVP. When will we stop having meals with soy protein in them? Well, the easy answer is when we stop buying them. The whole Hungry Man Mexican style fiesta has 660 calories, 19 grams of total fat, 7 grams of saturated fat, a half a gram of trans fat, 30 milligrams of cholesterol, 1,340 milligrams of sodium, 105 grams of carbohydrates, 14 grams of fiber, 15 grams of sugars, and 17 grams of protein. Wow, 105 grams of carbohydrates? I don't think I've ever seen a meal with that many carbohydrates in it. Now here's the cooking instructions that I found online, but on the box, there's microwave and oven instructions. So for you, the people, I went out and bought two, one to cook in the microwave and one to cook in the oven, for you, the people, so you don't have to. Now here's what our Hungry Man Mexican style fiesta looks like right out of the freezer and right out of the box. And now one goes into the microwave and one goes into the oven to cook according to the instructions on the box. And would you look at that, after diving a little deeper, I found both of the instructions. Now here's our first Hungry Man Mexican style fiesta after microwaving on high for a total of 7.5 minutes. And so far, it looked pretty good and it was smelling pretty good. But I was getting a strong aroma of cumin, which I love cumin, but a little bit of cumin goes a long way. Too much cumin can ruin a dish. So we spooned some of the sauce over the enchilada, and then we cut off the tip piece, which normally the tip pieces don't have any meat, so we took a second cut and got some enchilada with some meat, sauce, and cheese. And then into the old pie hole, and down the gullet it went. And my first impression, after waiting so many years to find and try this meal, just after that one bite, the wait was worth it. But we had to have a second bite to confirm that. And look at all that meat in the enchilada. Well, it's not all meat. Some of it's meat, but some of it's TVP, textured vegetable protein, which so far with the first bite, it didn't really bother me and you couldn't notice it. And the second bite of the enchilada was just as delicious as the first bite. And I'm really digging this meal so far. I was enjoying it so much that I went in for a third bite before we went to the other portions of the meal. The enchiladas were full of very well seasoned meat, meat and textured vegetable protein that is. The corn tortillas were nice and soft and fresh tasting, and the enchilada sauce was rich and zesty with a little bit of spice to it. It could have used more cheese though, but besides that, it was delicious. So next we went in to try the Mexican style rice with the cheese and the sauce, which was even better to me than the enchilada was. And remember in the beginning, I said it had an overwhelming smell of cumin, but I haven't tasted that yet. So next we went into the refried beans. And these refried beans are a lot watery than I'm used to. So we gave them a good mix. and then got a big old spoonful. And these were not looking like any refried beans I've had before. And then into the old pie hole and down the gullet they went. Holy jumping cumin seeds, Batman. There's a lot of cumin in these beans. If you love the overwhelming flavor of cumin, you're gonna love these beans because they have a lot of cumin in them. The beans by themselves with that much cumin, it's too much for me. So we got a bite of the beans with the enchilada, the sauce, the rice, and the cheese together to see if it would tone down the cumin flavor in the beans. Now that was what I was hoping for. That bite was absolutely delicious, and just like you were in a Mexican restaurant. As a matter of fact, once everything was combined together, I didn't really even notice the cumin flavor. It blended in perfectly with the rest of the meal. Next up, it was time to try the cocada coconut flavored pudding, which I've never heard of. So we gave it a good mix, and then got a spoonful, and then into the old pie hole, and down the gullet it went. Now you, the people, are gonna have to trust me on this one. That cocada was some of the nastiest stuff I've ever put in my mouth. It almost tasted like firm, coconut flavored Crisco shortening. It was disgusting. But the enchilada, sauce, rice, and cheese was not disgusting, so we had to go back in for one more bite. And I've gotta say, other than the refried beans having way too much cumin by themselves, and the cocada being totally disgusting, I really enjoyed the enchiladas, the sauce, the cheese, and the rice. And the refried beans mixed in, which is why I'm giving Hungry Man's Mexican style Fiesta, cooked in the microwave, a 7 out of 10. Now here's our second Hungry Man Mexican style Fiesta after baking in a 350-degree oven for 40 minutes. And those tortilla shells didn't look like they fared too well in the oven. It looks like they're dried up somewhat. So we spooned some of the sauce over the enchiladas. And then we cut off the unmeat-filled tip. Why does that sound dirty when I say cut off the tip? Maybe it's my mind. Anyone else think that? And then we cut off a piece with the meat. And then got a big old spoonful. And then into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And the enchiladas were just as delicious as the ones cooked in the microwave. There may have been a little bit more flavor in the oven version, but not enough more flavor to wait 40 minutes for your meal to cook. But we did have to get a second bite because it was that good. Then we went in and got a spoonful of the rice, the sauce, and the cheese. And is it just my imagination, or does it look like there's less rice in this than there was in the microwave version? So we got a big old spoonful of the rice, and then into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And it was just as delicious as the one cooked in the microwave. So far, I don't see any advantage of cooking this in the oven versus cooking in the microwave. They were both equally delicious. So then we went in to mix up the refried beans, and I thought these would be thicker than the ones cooked in the microwave, but just the opposite. They actually look wetter than the ones cooked in the microwave. Why is that? Inquiring minds want to know. So we got a big old spoonful. And then into the old pie hole and down the gullet they went. And again, the refried beans were really runny and way over seasoned with cumin. But once we combined a bite of the refried beans with the enchilada, the sauce, the cheese, and the rice, it was delicious. Delicious enough, we had to have one more bite of everything before we tasted the cocada again. Who am I kidding? We had to have another third bite before we tried the cocada. This was delicious. And then finally we went in to try the cocada, which I was definitely not looking forward to. So we got a spoonful, and then as I hesitated and said a quick prayer, into the old pie hole and down the gullet it went. And the second bite was just as disgusting as the first bite. But overall, the Hungry Man Mexican-style Fiesta was delicious, which is why I'm giving the oven version a 7 out of 10. Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.